Hey, there we go. It is recording now. Oh.
Okay.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, this wonderful young lady here is actually a YPA graduate. I'm going to let her tell you the story, but she graduated from YPA a few years ago, and she has undergone a very interesting journey in life. So without further ado, Jess, it's all yours.
Thank you. So I'm Jess. I graduated from YPA in 2018, but technically finished classes in December.
Hold on, I'm going to turn the volume up. I'm sorry, I missed some of it. There we go.
Okay. I'm Jess. I graduated from YPA in 2018, but I finished my classes in December of 2017 when I was 16. While going to YPA, I trained as a doula. The only class I had my senior year was chemistry with Mr. Keith. So he used to let me sneak out the back door to the student parking lot and leave to go to births to complete my certification. So I was done with all of that when I graduated from YPA and was able to start a business. Do you guys know what a doula is? I'm assuming. No. So a doula is someone who supports a family through pregnancy, birth, postpartum, miscarriages and stillbirth, abortions, anything that's related to reproductive health, adoption, all of that. So I specialize in postpartum support, but when I was going to YPA, the big thing I was doing was my training as a birth doula. So at births, I'm not a medical professional, but I'm there to kind of coach the entire family, support the mother, but also show the partner how they can support the mother, be an advocate, and try to help the mother have the most ideal birth for her. And then with postpartum care, I specialize in overnight support. So I work with a lot of families. I live up in Vermont and I live near Dartmouth College, and the hospital up here brings a lot of surgeons in and a lot of residents. So there's a lot of families who one of the parents or both are returning to work pretty quickly, and they need their sleep. I worked with a resident who was working 24-hour shifts and was on call and then was coming home and having to care for her baby as well. So I was there to help make sure that she was able to get some rest. And then I help with things like offering support with breastfeeding, cleaning, like bottle parts and things like that, doing the baby's laundry, just little things around the house, basically throughout the night, just to make sure that when the parents wake up the next morning, they can start their day stress-free, and just focus on providing the best care possible to their baby.
So you want me to go ahead and pull up the PowerPoint?
Yeah, we can just kind of, I don't know if I'm going to go through it in order, but just kind of bounce around on it.
Let's see. I know it's here somewhere. There it is, I think. Nope, that's not it. Where is it? Oh. Okay, I've got it up on the screen.
Okay. So there's just some pictures of me kind of doing my job. That picture at the bottom I included because every single day with my job, it's different. I can't really explain exactly what it looks like, but sometimes it's there's a lot of baby wearing involved, so using different carriers. So that's me baby wearing twins in the middle, both at the same time. And then one day for 4th of July, we grilled, and I wore the baby and helped the family grill. And we went paddle boarding, so I wore the baby on the paddle board. Close to the shallow end, we didn't go out far for safety reasons. But yeah, I get to do a lot of really weird, interesting stuff with my job. So I faced a lot of criticism for not going to college. A lot of people thought that maybe I would do okay with my business for a little while or enjoy it for a little while, but I would either burn out and not have the ability to do something else because I didn't have a degree, or that I would just be broke and never make a, a livable wage. That has not been the case. Things have actually gone very well, and I am very happy with my decision. Part of that is because I don't have any debt. My schooling was like $400. Um, and I've put more money into that continuing my education, but the initial training was 400. So I paid for that, and I've made a good salary since. That image is the first birth I ever attended. It was at Baby and Co., which was a birth center that was in Charlotte, but it unfortunately closed down because they were funded by some investors from New York, and they lost their funding. I was 15 when I attended my first birth. So my job has brought me kind of all over the world. I got to go, originally I moved up to New Hampshire when I was 16 to go to nursing school, but I decided that the only reason I really wanted to do that was because my parents were telling me I should. Um, and although it seemed like it was linked to the job that I chose, and it was a similar path, it just wasn't something I wanted to do. So I kept putting it off and saying, oh, I'll go next year when I'm 17, I'll go when I'm 18, I'll go on time. Um, and then deep down, I just knew I wasn't going to go. So I ended up moving to France. Um, and that's me and some of the kids that I worked with. I was an au pair there. And then I worked in Hawaii as a doula. I traveled all over the US. That bottom photo is in Athens. I traveled Europe, studying birth and postpartum and the traditions they have there. I was able to move into my own home and buy my dream car. So
What kind of
things have
car,
turned out. What was that?
what kind of car is that?
It's a Tesla Model X. I'm pretty proud of it. It's got
Yes,
the
I imagine.
Falcon wing doors.
Um, I've loved those cars, but I do know that they are not cheap. uh,
No, it was not. But
um,
the insurance is cheap, and it's electric, and it's free to charge. So I drove it down to South Carolina back in September, so a couple months ago, and it took a long time to do the drive with charging. I mean, it's a 14-hour drive anyways. But I didn't have to pay to charge it. And usually when I do the drive down to South Carolina, I pay a lot for gas. So it's nice. And it has Netflix. You can watch Netflix while charging. So
how long did it? How long does it take to recharge?
usually like 40 minutes.
Oh,
And it calculates it for you. So when you type in the address you're going to, it tells you every charging stop to go to and how long to charge for. So sometimes it has you stop just for like 25 minutes, and then sometimes you stop for closer to an hour. And all the chargers are located usually near somewhere that has like a 24-hour business. So you stop, go use the bathroom, grab something to eat, watch something on Netflix. I slept a lot of the time while charging just because it was a long drive, and I wasn't stopping halfway. So I just stopped and napped whenever my car was charging.
okay. And you just bought your first home.
Yeah. So, well, technically, I inherited a home. So I've been fixing it up. It was my grandfather's house. So my current project is just redoing the house. Um, yeah.
Go on.
And then I wrote a book. So continuing education is something that's really important to me, but it's something that can be expensive. And I like to find ways to continue my education without it being stressful financially. So living near Dartmouth, I found out from one of my past clients that you can audit a class at Dartmouth auditing is basically where you take the class, but you don't get credit for it. You just take it for the sole purpose of like learning the information. It's not giving you credit towards a degree. Um, this appealed to me because I don't need the degree, and I wanted to continue learning. So Dartmouth allows you to do this for free. Some colleges, it's just a lower price than what a normal course credit would be. So it's like a couple hundred. Um, depending on where you're located, each college is different. But Dartmouth allows you to just email a professor, ask to take their course. They can say no. They get to choose how involved you are. So the courses I took, I did all the assignments and was involved. They weren't graded, but I got to just submit them for feedback. And I did like the final research paper and got to get a lot of feedback on that, just because not going to college means I didn't have experience writing any kind of research paper, and I wanted to learn how to do that. So I got to kind of choose how involved I was, but I was pretty involved in the courses. So I took classes on like health disparities, because that relates to my job. I took gender and women's studies courses, which some might find interesting, but maybe they don't want a degree in that, just for practicality reasons, depending on what you are trying to do with your degree. But they're interesting courses, so maybe you don't want to take them while actually attending college, but you could take them like in the summer. Dartmouth does terms, so we have quarters, 4 quarters of the year, and you attend for 3. I know most schools have semesters, but a student could like take a course, audit a course in their off term just for fun, which I know sounds kind of, I know most people don't think of like going to school as fun, but I got to have this whole experience where I went to the frat parties, I took the classes, I ate on campus and spent all day in the library, all night in the library with people. I went to different events on campus, did all of the college things. And one day I was on the phone with my mom and she was like, "You're kind of a genius because you're having this pseudo college experience." I stole that from my mother for the name of my book. But she's like, my brother was in college at the time. He was in his senior year. And she was like, he's, so stressed about his grades. He's stressed about the student loans, and you're out there doing the exact same thing and you don't have any of that. You just get to go and do it. And maybe, maybe you have no desire to have a college experience at all. But for me, everyone kept telling me this was something that I needed to experience. And I just really didn't think that it was for me. So this was my way of going and experiencing it, but not putting my business on hold to go and get a degree that wouldn't support my career really, because I have found all these loopholes to be able to do research alongside other professors and people around the world without having a PhD myself. So I didn't really see the point in having student loans that I'd be paying off for the rest of my life, probably if I went somewhere like Dartmouth, when it wouldn't increase my income or opportunities at all. So for me, I went and just had this experience. So this goes a little more into depth on what a doula is. There's just a basic definition, but I specialize in caring for and educating families on how to care for multiples and preemies. So right now I'm working with twins who were born 4.5 weeks early. They were 3 pounds, just over 3 pounds when they were born. One of them is now 5 pounds. So we're like celebrating that because they're super, super tiny. I also do travel support. So like going to Hawaii, I traveled with a family to Hawaii and then worked for them there and worked for a couple other families while there. So bringing a newborn on a plane is not easy. So I help families with the actual travel process. And then my biggest thing is the overnight support. And then if you could, this is just a couple more. Can you go back? This is a couple more pictures of just like kind of what my job looks like. So that's me holding triplets, then the 2 babies again, a little baby that was born in Charlotte who I cared for with her full head of hair, and she had a lot of hair. And then that's an event that took place at the like BMX track that's in Rock Hill near Riverwalk. But it was held by something called Fit for Mom, which is like a workout group. They incorporate strollers in their workout, so you bring your baby along, and it's all about like finding your community as a parent. There's this saying, "It takes a village." I think that the saying applies to everyone, not just parents, but we're supposed to have these strong communities that we can rely on, and we're supposed to support each other. But a lot of times that's not the case, whether it's because we feel like we can't ask for help or just that the help isn't there. And something I'm trying to do is increase the resources in my community so that the help is there and people, everyone can ask for it and not feel that. Unfortunately, doulas are considered a luxury service, and that's something I'm trying to change because it's something that everyone should have access to. But that was a mom who she had a 7-week-old, and she just walked up and handed the 7-week-old to me and was like, I need to go use the bathroom, and you look like you know what you're doing. So she let me hold her baby for a while.
And you didn't run away with it.
I didn't. I just hung out there, and all these people came up to me and they were like, of course, you were the one that they just like, here you go, take the baby.
Very trusting parents.
Yeah. And then, can you go back one?
Yep.
These are images from a home birth that I attended. It was my best friend's birth. And you can see she was very happy afterwards. She had a cesarean with her first, and then had what's called a VBAC, so vaginal birth after cesarean. She was 18 months, her son was 18 months old when she had her second, and providers have this rule that you cannot try for a VBAC unless you are 18, it's exactly 18 months or more since you've had the C-section. Of course, I know some people who have said, I don't care what you're saying as my provider, I'm going to have a VBAC anyways, and if they don't consent to the C-section, they can't do it. So they do have a VBAC, but for safety precautions, they recommend that you don't have one until at least 18 months after your cesarean. She was exactly 18 months, had a beautiful home birth. It was very quick, moved very, very quickly. I got there and the baby arrived about 18 minutes later. The midwife didn't even make it to the birth. When my friend had called her, she was very calm. The midwife didn't think that the baby was coming that quickly. And then she called and said, okay, I think you should head over now. And she was on the phone with her throughout the entire process. And the midwife pulled into the driveway just as the baby was born. I was photographing the birth, but the person whose head you can see is another doula. She caught the baby. And then the other head is my friend's mother-in-law, who also helped catch the baby. And usually what happens is a baby crowns, which is when their head starts to come out and you can just see the top of it. They can crown for a while, and that's usually when you start pushing, is when the baby crowns. If you don't push, the baby will come out anyways because your body guides the baby out. She was not pushing. This baby did not crown. It was just everything was moving along. We were all like really hoping the midwife would be there soon, and just supporting her. And then all of a sudden I looked down and said, guys, the baby's coming out right now. And then all of a sudden there she was. She just came out very quickly. So then she was on hands and knees position. They flipped her over. She held the baby, happy as can be. She then hemorrhaged, which was very scary. The midwife was able to control everything very quickly. Everyone in the room kind of knew something was going on, but the midwife walked in, and the minute she realized what was happening, took full control of the situation. An ambulance was not necessary. She had a medication called Pitocin that she was able to inject her with to control the bleeding, and she was perfectly fine, didn't have any stitches, was able to stay home, and didn't have to be transferred to the hospital at all. So
That one or
you go back to that one. So the U.S. has the highest maternal mortality rate of any developed country. At one point, it was even higher than Turkey's. It might still be. It kind of drops to Turkey and the U.S. are kind of tied. Sometimes the U.S. has one more maternal mortality than Turkey, and sometimes it has one less. Women of color are 3 to 4 times more likely to die during childbirth. In Alabama, 70% of deaths that are labeled maternal mortality were proven to be preventable. Nationwide, I read that it's 80%, which is a huge amount. 4 out of 5 of these deaths are occurring while pregnant and postpartum, not when you're actually in labor, which is why having resources for families is really important. When you're postpartum, usually you don't get a super long maternity leave, and paternity leave is usually only 2 weeks. Sometimes it's paid, sometimes it's not. So some people get the 2 weeks paternity leave and they can't take it because they can't afford to not have an income for 2 weeks. So these mothers are at home alone with this newborn baby, and there's a chance that something may go wrong and they could bleed out, and they're at home alone and there's nothing they can do, which is why we need better support postpartum so these people aren't alone suffering in their homes. With the way we handle birth in America, most people see an OBGYN, while in other countries you see a midwife. You only see an OB if you are high risk. And sometimes the OBs call in midwives for their input on something with a high risk case, because midwives are trained in what birth looks like and how to support it, while an OB is trained in how to get a baby out fast. So you give birth wherever you're going to give birth, home, birth center, hospital. And then when you are home, if you gave birth somewhere else, the midwife or doctor would come to your home in other countries 1 day postpartum. Well, you would still be in the hospital 1 day postpartum, so they would come to your room if that's where you gave birth. But once you're home, they come 3 days, 5 days, a week, 2 weeks, 3, 5, and 6 weeks. While in America, you get 1 checkup, even if you have a C-section, which is major abdominal surgery, you get 1 checkup at 6 weeks postpartum. If something's going to go wrong, it's going to happen before you're 6 weeks postpartum. So there's a huge push in America right now to return to the midwifery model of care because it would reduce maternal mortality by 80%. So this little chart that shows the percentages of things being lowered with doulas, you're likely to have a shorter labor, less likely to request an epidural, less likely to have a C-section, less likely for interventions like forceps. It talks about reduction in oxytocin use. Oxytocin is the love hormone. It is the hormone that is released in your body when you hug someone you care about. It's also called like the cuddle hormone. It's released in the highest quantities when you make a baby, when you give birth, and when a mother breastfeeds a baby. So when someone gives birth, oxytocin breaks the blood-brain barrier, so they feel this euphoric high afterwards. So even though they were in pain, they look at this baby and they are just on top of the world, happy as can be, at least for for a little while after. When you're induced, they use a drug called Pitocin to cause you to go into labor. They do this if you reach 42 weeks because they're worried you're past your due date and it's time for baby to come. They're not really able to live in the womb much longer than that. So they recommend an induction. Some people choose not to go to an induction. So like if they were inducing you for convenience reasons, this happens a lot around the holidays. People don't really want to be delivering a bunch of babies on Christmas, so they'll induce a lot of their patients beforehand. That way they can have more time off for the holidays. There were also doctors who said that they induced patients and did unnecessary C-sections because they wanted to make it to a golf tournament. So there's a lot of issues with unnecessary interventions and procedures being done. So some people choose not to be induced, and they will schedule an appointment for you to be induced, but if you don't show up, they're not going to come to your house and be like, come on, we got to go to the hospital. You just don't show up. But the issue with Pitocin for some people is that it's the synthetic form of oxytocin, so it doesn't break the blood-brain barrier. So you just feel the pain of contractions. There's no euphoric high afterwards. So usually people who are induced are a little more sad after they have their baby.
There is another name for Pitocin. We used to use it in the Air Force. Do you know what that name is?
I don't think I've heard another name, but if you say it, I might.
We called it jet juice.
I've never heard that.
jet juice is gas. It makes the jet go faster, right? Well, Pitocin does the same thing. It just makes the delivery go a lot faster.
Mhm.
That was, just a common terminology we used in the hospital, or Air Force hospitals. It was called jet juice. So, I didn't know if you had ever heard that, so thought I'd throw that out there.
I
Okay.
haven't heard that. And it's also used not just to induce labor, but to control bleeding if there is a lot of bleeding afterwards. So can you go back? So this is just the same home birth. That's me swaddling the baby afterwards, after something called golden hour. So even while she was hemorrhaging, the events that took place while she hemorrhaged, I mean, this midwife had to pull a clot out of my friend's body, and that was kind of horrifying for everyone in the room to witness when it's someone that you is your best friend or family member and care about very deeply. But the entire time all of this was going on, the baby was on her chest. The baby was with her, because the baby was healthy and there was no reason for them to be separated. Golden hour is the hour after birth where usually parents do skin to skin. When you're born, it is one of the most shocking, traumatic things as a human being we experience, because 1 minute you are in this bubble of protection where you have everything you need right there, and then you open your eyes and there's this bright world and you haven't seen anything around any of this stuff before. I tell families, like, babies get excited when they see a tree, because they might walk past it. You might take your baby on a walk and walk past trees every day, but one day they're going to realize what they're looking at, and they realize just how weird it looks, and that they've never seen these things before. So it's best to have the baby close to mom and dad, where they can hear mom's heartbeat, because that's a sound that they could hear in the womb, where they have the warmth of their mom's skin, her scent, all of that. Then they usually also will try to get baby to breastfeed. When you have given birth, usually your milk hasn't come in yet, so you have something called colostrum, which is just like the milk that comes in at first before you actually get a full supply. So baby just kind of eats that, and their stomach is very, very tiny, so they don't need a lot to eat, but they have to eat often. So she did all of that, and then baby was handed off to me and to her mother-in-law, while her husband took her and helped her go clean up so that she could come back and rest with the baby. And then that's the midwife next to me, just kind of taking a peek at her. So one of the things that a lot of people said to me is, if you don't go to college, even if you do like a trade school or something, you're not going to make a lot of money, which I think a lot of people know is not the case, because you can go to a trade school, you can do an apprenticeship and become an electrician and make a very good salary. So Google says that a doula makes $15,000 to $30,000 a year. The reason Google says that is because a lot of people who are doulas are moms who gave birth and either had a doula there or just had an interesting experience and wanted to make a career change, but they're still staying home with their kids. So they're only doing like 1-2 births a month. Most doulas max out at 4 births a month, just because, when I did my certification, I had 2 clients be induced on the exact same day. One was induced 2 weeks early for medical reasons, and one was induced 2 weeks late because they went past their due date. I was at one birth for 28 hours and then left and went to the next birth for 10 hours. And then I thought, okay, what are the odds this is going to happen again? My next 2 clients both have emergency C-sections the same day. So I'm going from one hospital to the next, trying to be there when they get out of the operating room. So taking on more than 4 births a month just isn't really practical. Some doulas have like a partner they work with, and they decide who's on call what day, and they back each other up. That chart on the side shows like the challenges of being on call, and it says like client load, but also life on call. So like it shows a drink in the picture, but there's a lot of things as an adult that you might not be able to do while you're on call. You can't just go out drinking one night because you don't know when you're getting called to a birth. You're also self-employed, so you don't have benefits. So since I'm still 19, I am on my parents' health insurance, but when I turn 26, I get kicked off of that. And I have to pay for health insurance, and making $30,000 a year doesn't really support all of those expenses. So I charge a rate that I think that I deserve based on my education, my experience, and the cost of living in my area. With postpartum support, I make about $50 an hour. Last year, I made six figures. This year, it was not six figures, but that was because of COVID. And with a pandemic going on, a lot of people have taken a cut in how much they usually make. I like the ability to create my own schedule. So this year, I might have had a lot of time off, but last year I took on a lot of clients and worked crazy hours. And I enjoyed it, and I got to control how much money I was making. Right now I'm working 12-hour overnight shifts 6 nights a week, and then a daytime shift on the weekends, and then any other things that I have to do in between. So I get off work, and I still have to take care of my dogs and maintain my house and run errands and do all of those things. So my week is very busy, but it's just for 4 weeks. And then I have the whole month of December off. And I can afford to do that because when you work crazy hours for a few weeks, you have a huge income, and then you can afford to not work for a little while, and it balances out. So I've just had some like opportunities that I think are pretty interesting. I was supposed to spend part of this year volunteering in Honduras at a clinic. That did not happen because of COVID. Things are very bad there right now, and they have travel bans. But once those are lifted and it's safe to travel there, I will be going with this organization to work as a doula in a hospital there. I've gotten to work with different researchers at hospitals and colleges. I was on the news. I got interviewed in the newspaper and on the radio. A lot of companies will just send me baby items, so I'm able to pass those on to clients who might be in need, or just people in the community that are in need. One of the things that I've been able to do is start a baby wearing library. So baby carriers, I think, are amazing. There's all these studies on something called kangaroo care, which is where you baby wear preemies who are in the NICU, and it's been proven that that helps their development and if they are at risk, if they're having health issues, they're more likely to their health is more likely to improve with kangaroo care. So I love baby wearing. I also think it's great because then you can wear the baby. Maybe they're sleeping, maybe they're just hanging out, but you have your hands free and you can get things done. In the winter, it's nice because they're all bundled up and you can wear like a big coat and just zip them up inside. And I think it's great. But baby carriers can be hundreds of dollars. You can get them secondhand for less. You can get some that just are on the market for less. But the issue is the baby's their legs need to be in this M position, and they shouldn't just be hanging. It's bad for hip development. So a lot of the less expensive carriers aren't safe developmentally wise. So these companies have sent me all these carriers that are safe and are higher end carriers that are usually like $200 each for free. So my clients can try them out. And if they like it and it works really well for their family, then they can go and buy one instead of spending hundreds of dollars on these items that might not work for their baby. And then the other experiences have just been like writing my book, which is something I didn't think I would do until into my 30s. But I spent this year just kind of writing, and then decided to send it to a publisher, and it got picked up within a week, and it'll be on shelves in a few months. It's being printed right now. And then all of the traveling experiences I've had. That picture was taken in Rome. And then, so continuing education, this is something that I think is like so important. So again, auditing classes, but also getting CEUs. So I went to like an event that was in, is it Greenville is the one in South Carolina. Greensboro is North Carolina, right? I think I remember that correctly. But whatever the green one in South Carolina is, I went there and listened to Ina Mae Gaskin speak. She is been labeled as like the grandmother of midwifery. She's an amazing home birth midwife who has been attending births for years and has written some amazing books. So I got to go and meet her and listen to her speak about shoulder dystocia, which was really an interesting lecture. And then I got a continuing education unit for that. And then globalhealthlearning.org, this website has had so many random trainings I've been able to do, and they're all free. So they had one on postpartum family planning, one on different birth control options, one on postpartum support, just all different things like that. But then they also had some that were on like emergency obstetric care. So I took that one so that I could get a little more knowledge before I go to Honduras, whenever that may be. So yeah, there are a lot of resources out there where you can continue to learn in a less stressful way. You can get hands-on learning. I used to volunteer at I think it's called Palmetto Women's Center now, but it was called it was a pregnancy, it used to be called Palmetto Pregnancy Center, but it's in Rock Hill, and I used to go there after class, and I would volunteer as a clinical assistant. It's a faith-based pregnancy center, so a lot of people coming in there, they come in for free pregnancy testing and free ultrasounds. A lot of people are exploring their options, possibly considering abortion, but a lot of people that come in are considering it for financial reasons. So this center helps provide them with resources to where if they would like to continue the pregnancy, they have everything they need to do so. So they set them up with like this like card that they can take to the Salvation Army that gets them a certain amount of baby clothes, diapers, formula if they need it, and like one large baby item. So they could pick out like a nice rocking chair or crib or one of the bigger items from there. And then the family can continue to come back to get to the pregnancy center to get formula throughout the baby's life. Around Christmas time, they did this thing where they had like just a tree in the front and all these different wrapped gifts that said like a gender and kind of like age range, and you could just pick a random gift, and some people got just like a box of diapers. If you go in for an ultrasound and come back once you've had the baby, they give you this like big basket with like a nice blanket and hat and bottles and things in it. So yeah, they do a lot to support families in the community who don't have the financial resources they feel they need to care for the baby.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put you back on full screen since we're pretty much done with the PowerPoint, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'll put you back on full screen and open it up for questions.
Okay, so can men can wear like the baby carriers, right?
Yeah.
So like what? No, this is kind of dumb, but could like the husband like be working on like some like a little contraption in his like garage while she's doing chores or something? Like what's the limits of what you can do with the baby carrier?
While wearing the baby, I think that you can do like anything. I mean, it depends on the carrier that you're using, but I have some that are like wraps, and the baby's head is like pretty securely tucked into the wrap. Their head's like turned to the side. You can't have their head like fully in it because then they're breathing in carbon dioxide and that's not safe. But they can have their head to the side and kind of be facing outward. And I've had babies that just sleep in there and they're so secure that if I like bend over to do something, they're not going to move. I've had to do a lot of there's a lot of babies who are very fussy and want to be held, and the parents really want the baby to be held. There's a million things that need to be done. I wore like my nephew, and I had to go to the bathroom, and he was passed out in the carrier and didn't move a muscle, and I was able to go and use the bathroom while he was in the carrier. So I think that you can do pretty much anything. I've done like yoga while baby wearing. I grilled, I paddleboarded. Yeah, and they make ones that look more like masculine. There's one that a lot of people have that's called like the tactile carrier, and it has like it looks like an army baby carrier.
Camouflage. Um, yeah. And to me, I think it's very important that the husband take, or I shouldn't say husband, but the male partner really participate in all of this. I know you can't see me. I can see you just fine. For me, one of the most important things, I have both a boy and a girl. One of the most important things to me was I was in there with the delivery, and I got to cut the umbilical cord. People think that's gross or anything else. To me, it was very symbolic because it was the first time I could share in that joy that my wife had been experiencing for 9 months. Now that the baby is out, I'm symbolically severing that tie with her so that now we can become a family. And I was able to be there with both of her children, cut both of the umbilical cords. And it's a moment I'll never forget my entire life. It was just that special. And I think that's the first step toward really bonding with that child that you created. And I'm just shocked that more parents or more fathers aren't actually involved in doing that or being there. But, I understand with COVID, there's, a lot of restrictions. But even without the COVID, I've heard everything from, well, I don't want to be there because I don't want to see my wife or girlfriend in pain. I don't want to, they come up with every excuse in the world other than I want to be there because I love this woman so much that I want to share in this joy. And I understand, a lot of what you're doing is partially because of COVID, but partially because right now in the economic times, a lot of times, one partner is just not able to be there because they are at work and they can't afford to take the time off.
Well, and then one of the issues has been that a lot of people, when they have their second, third, fourth, any child after their first, they have family come into town to help out with the other kids while they go to the hospital to give birth. Because you're not just gone for a few hours delivering a baby and then going home. You can sign like the paper and just leave the hospital, but it's not recommended. So you're in the hospital for a few days and you need someone to watch your child. So I've had people reach out to me and ask if I would do what's called like a sibling doula, where I just like basically babysit their children while they're giving birth, or their husband stays home with the kids, and then I replace the husband and go to the hospital with the mom, because COVID is only allowing one person to go in. So it's the doula or the dad, and they also have to figure out who's going to watch their other kids. So COVID has unfortunately kind of messed with the good system we had going of, I think a lot more dads are being involved. I remember when I was in middle school, I had this friend who told me her mom was an OBGYN and that it wasn't normal for dads to go to the births, that they weren't supposed to be there. But it is. I mean, that is your child that you are welcoming into the world, and they have every right to be a part of that. And it makes me sad that COVID has had an effect on that. It's also, COVID has had a good effect on some parts of pregnancy. There have been less premature babies born because more people are at home, and even though they're under financial stresses, they're spending more time at home with family, cooking home cooked meals, and being around people that they love. So there's been less stress in that part of it. So they've had less preemies born, which has been good. And there's been less inductions in some states, more in some states. Some people are inducing a lot of patients because they want to get them in and out of the hospital quickly while cases are low. some people aren't inducing people, they're just letting them go into labor on their own because they don't want to bring them into the hospital until their body is really ready to give birth.
Kind of a follow-up question. I'm sure you are reading a lot more information about all of this because this is your business. What is December, January, February going to bring with a spike in births? Because we shut down in basically March and everybody is quarantined at home.
It's
There's
the
nothing to do.
quarantine babies. It's the quarantine babies.
So what are we going to call that next generation?
Oh, there was some, I think they were called like the quarantinis or something like,
COVID.
yeah, it's interesting because there has been a lot of, there's a lot of research on this actually. So like one country had this huge snowstorm and everyone was stuck home. And then 9 months after the snowstorm, there was a huge increase in the amount of babies being born. So like when we got hit with like some hurricane and then we had some snowstorm in South Carolina, like all of these natural disasters hit and people are on lockdown, and 9 months later, there's an increase in the amount of babies being born. So with quarantine, the interesting thing though, is that it's an increase in firstborn children because the people who are at home with their kids are very busy taking care of their kids during quarantine. But there's a lot of younger, newly married couples who are stuck at home. And I've gotten a lot of calls from students at Dartmouth who are at Tuck, the business school. So they're all like in their 30s. But that's been the majority of my new clients is one of the parents is a business student, and they're just these younger couples, and they're having a baby.
Well, I was just, back when all of this started, I was like doing my own mental calculations and saying, okay, we're going to have a big new baby boom generation coming around in, November through January or so.
Oh, I was like, this year might have been pretty slow for my business, but next year's going to be good. Lots of babies being born.
Do we have any other questions?
There was one other thing I wanted to mention. I don't think I got into this, but the other thing I'm working on is I'm creating a college program that would train doulas. And it's being offered as an extracurricular through some of the Ivy League schools next fall. So they're funding it and students can take it for free in order to increase the amount of people who are maybe like studying anthropology or sociology or even nursing students, just anyone who's working with birth, babies, all of that. And I just got confirmation I'm going to be offering it at Clemson next fall. So.
And you're the one that's writing the curriculum.
Yes, I created it all myself.
So here you've got a young lady that's 19 years old, just a year or two older than you are, and took a totally different career path than the traditional one. I'm hoping that we can, get some copies of the book once it's actually published and put them in our library downstairs and start lending them out to probably more of our juniors than our seniors, because at that senior year, you pretty much already decided you're going to college or you're not. I think the junior year is kind of where a lot of you may be making that final decision and looking at opportunities that may be out there. Obviously, this is just one of many different career paths that you could take that involve little initial training, little initial outlay of money. Of course, as you develop in your profession, in any profession, you're going to have continuing education. And I think you've hit on a gold mine as far as for you personally. It's obviously a huge passion for you. And, you are, in a teacher's mind, you're the epitome of a lifelong learner, because you just have this passion for knowledge and it doesn't matter where you get it from. As long as you get the knowledge, you're not really worried about, well, I've got to pay a few dollars here or a few dollars there. You're not really worried about having that degree. You'd much rather have the knowledge than the
Well,
PhD or everything. You know,
one of
eventually you may get there.
And well, one of the things with being self-employed is you pay a good chunk of your income towards taxes. It ends up being 20-25%. But you can write off a lot of things. So all of those courses that you take, any course I sign up for, ends up being a tax write-off, which it makes it a little easier.
Yeah, you know, take advantage of everything that's there. You know, that's how you are successful, is being able to do those things. And, you know, find every little loophole you can. It's your right. So, okay, any other questions? We're down to about 5 or 10 minutes left in class. So, Jess, again, thank you so much for your time. I am going to follow up today with you with an email. I do have some other questions for you, just as an aside, not necessarily for the students. So I will follow up an email with you later today. I know you probably just got off that 12-hour shift, so you're ready to go to bed.
Yeah.
Take a few hours and then you have to get up and go do it again.
Yeah. I have I have to leave at 8:20 p.m. So I'm gonna sleep until, well, not until 8, but like well into the afternoon.
Okay. Well, thank you again so much for your time.
Yeah, and I wanted to say, if anyone is interested in asking more questions, if you think of a question, or if you're interested in becoming a doula, you can grab my email and feel free to reach out to me.
Okay. So I do have your permission to share.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you again so much for your time. You have been absolutely wonderful. I hope you have a great Thanksgiving and a great holidays. And I look forward to talking to you at some point in the near future.
Thank you.
Thank
It was so
you.
good talking to you guys.
Okay.
Bye.
No final questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so the book, what all does the book cover? The one that you already wrote that's been published?
What was the
Your
question?
book, what type of information is in your book that you're writing or that you've written?
So, the book is basically my life experiences that led me to making my decision not to go to college, and then all of the experiences that I've had on campus. So it talks about the things I saw at frat parties, the things I saw, like in the library, experiences I had in classes that I took, the friends that I made. I wrote a lot about like inclusivity on campus because that's really important at Dartmouth, but there's a lot of students who come from a certain background. So it's kind of my analysis of all of these people I met and the experiences I had and if I thought it was worth it. So it's not like the normal should I go to college book that's going to be like, here's a list of colleges that you might be interested in. It's not like how to apply to college. It's kind of like, here's my life story of what I experienced and did I think it was worth it and is it for everyone?
It's kind of like a diary, but in a text format.
Yeah, well, it started out as something in the notes app on my iPhone where I wrote like, we have this place called King Arthur Flour. It's a flour company. But they have a bakery up here that's very famous, and they put a smaller location, like smaller version of it in the college. So in the library, everyone would go to CAF, and I was nannying this baby, and I would bring her with me, and I would just go hang out on campus. And there's a whole chapter on all of these comments I got from people who assumed I was her mom, and just assumed that I was going to fail. So it also pushed me to like reach out to colleges and try to get more resources for people who either, like my best friend, the one who had the home birth, her husband's an engineering student. He's a senior. He's 21. They have 2 kids. They chose to get married and have kids young. But there's also some people who end up in a situation where maybe they didn't choose to do that or didn't expect that to happen. And there should be resources for them, and they shouldn't feel that they are going to fail and that they shouldn't have that education anymore. So I wrote a chapter on that. And it started out as like these funny titles in my phone, like it was called Don't Bring the Baby to Calf. And I just wrote all these funny little short stories of things I saw on campus. I sent all those short stories to a publisher, and they were like, if you expand on all this, you have a book. And within a few weeks, there was a full book written.
Wow, just awesome. Okay. Thanks again. I certainly do appreciate it. I know the students do. I wish we could have had everybody here, but we're only a few short. But it's right before Thanksgiving, so enjoy your holidays. Enjoy your afternoon nap, and we will hopefully touch base with you again very near future. So thanks again.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.